Good afternoon and welcome to Harlem Sculpture Gardens. This is your host, Savannah Bailey McLean, and we're very happy to have in the studio with us today Miguel Otero Fuentes. Thank you so much, Miguel, for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. And today, Miguel is going to talk to us about his sculpture, XOXO. And so I wanted to ask you, Miguel, what inspired you to do that particular sculpture?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, on the lockdown, this was when the idea came about in a time when we were all separated and encapsulated. And this was sculpture looking to the future, to a time where we would reconnect as friends, as parents, as families, everything. So that's when the inception of this idea started. And then, it was a time where, it's still a time where we use our mobile devices to communicate.
Yes.
And very common signature is XOXO to express hugs and kisses to just kind of like show that affection and love and that intention. And this sculpture, what it does is it takes those letters, X and O, and it puts them in three-dimensional space. And when seen from a perspective, you can see a heart.
Yes.
So it brings the same intention that the letters do in text messaging, but it brings us to our 3D reality. That's where everything started. Little did I know that the making of the sculpture would bring connection and union circumstances to my life as well.
Okay.
For example, to build it, I had to do it myself because like the financial restrictions of the sculpture. So I call my dad, I call my brother, and they all live outside of New York. And us three haven't been in a room for many, many years, and this sculpture brought us together.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Yeah, no, it's beyond like what I could have imagined. So I always say that this sculpture is also made of connection and unity and love. Aside from its physical materials, which are steel and bolts of stainless steel and and paint.
Okay. That is a really nice story. I like that very much. Now, how much does this piece weigh?
It weighs close to 600 pounds, and it was designed because it is a sculpture of connection. The connections between the parts is also like a very important part of the sculpture, and a lot of thinking went into the process of how and how many parts it is made of. So it's made out of 12 parts, like a clock. So it's like these two clocks merging together, these two circles. And the parts are designed so that one person can carry one part of it. So at the moment of assembly, like, it can be put together with friends. Instead of like requiring like equipment and specialized personnel to do it. So that's how much it weighs and why it weighs.
No, that's interesting because design is a very important component. And a lot of people don't realize how important design is for sculpture, and how you assemble things and how you design parts. All of that is very important when you are, putting together sculpture. So this is very fascinating. This is good for our listeners to understand this. I mean, we've seen your videos online. You got lots of videos showing you with the tools and the mask and how you're loading, unloading. That must have been a lot of fun too, was it?
No, the process was a real experience, a chapter, a part of my life that will always be with me, like waking up those days and like staying in the studio up until who knows when, and lifting
Yeah.
the parts, measuring, like it was a very physical process.
Okay.
Also, in the process of making, I did not know how to weld. I had welded before with equipment at school when I was studying architecture, but I was no expert at it.
Okay.
So I learned. I got a YouTube course
Okay.
to learn how to weld.
Okay.
And I was gonna grind the welds on a connection that the sculpture has. And my dad, who was in the studio, said, "No, don't grind those. Those are your first welds, and they are important." So
Ah.
when you see the sculpture at the cross joints, you'll see that the welds are not perfect.
Okay.
And it's because they are actually my first welds out of the practice ones in the real world, and they're there up until the sculpture exists. So there were like little things in the process, like for example, at one point I needed a certain amount of bolts. I needed 42 bolts of a specific size, and I went to the hardware store, and there were only 42 bolts.
Wow.
So the process was filled with these serendipities, and it was I had to show up
Gotcha.
to do the work. But but by showing up, there was something else guiding me through the process and resolving all of this.
Well, I just want to thank you so much, Miguel, for sharing that, because I learned a lot more than I did beforehand about your sculpture. And we're looking forward to seeing it in Morningside Park in West Harlem this coming May. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Savona.